Yo, hello and welcome back to another character study. Here's a quick recap of all the other character studies so far, so you can keep track. We invented a sheet to pinpoint the actual strength of every tier 1 unit in the game. This sheet lists their raw stats, their stats by their effects, a multiplier of how often that effect actually takes place per round, and a multiplier accounting for the tempo of the effect. With this we had determined in the other episodes the following. The horse is bad. The pig is bad. The beaver is bad. The otter is quite good. But if you want to know why though, well, I did these videos for a reason, so check them out if you like. Alright, before we dive in, we first have to include the balance changes from the latest update. So here we go. The dog only buffs the shot by +1 health instead of +1/+1, so the dog went down a lot. The horse is now a 2/1, so it went up a bit. The mosquito only changed for level 2 and 3, so we will ignore that here for now. The pig is a 3/1 now instead of a 2/2, so no changes here. And regarding tier 1s, we're done. So, you read the title. Is a 5/1 really worse than a 3/3? I'm not a fan of cheap tricks of content creators, honestly, who ask a question in the beginning and reveal the answer after 30 minutes of useless ramblings and ad breaks, so the answer to this question comes right after the sponsor of this video. Yes, it's really worse. I gotta be honest, I played a little trick on you, cause this video is not really about the why it's worse, but about the how much it's worse. But here's a small little detour for the why. Imagine you having a 3/3. When it fights a 5/1, both die. Imagine you having a 5/5. When it fights a 5/1, both also die. That makes the 5/1 good, cause it will trade up, as the overall stats or combined stats of the 5/1 is 6 and of the 5/5 is 10. Having the stats skewed to have more attack than HP enables the unit to trade up, which inherently is good. Having the stats skewed to have more HP generally enables the unit to be able to trade 2 for 1. The more extreme you skew it towards attack, it is getting vulnerable for trading down 2 though, so a 1/1 can kill a 5/1 after all. And the more you skew it to have more HP, so a 1/5 for example, it is likely to not trade at all and just die, cause dealing 1 damage per attack only really helps if it fights like 5 1/1s after another. But that's not really likely to happen. Maybe you have played a crab at some point as a 350 for example. That crab will survive a lot of hits in the late game but probably won't kill anything. A 350 stat line equals 53 overall stats. I'd actually rather take a 26-27 for example than a 350 or a 53 any day, because the 2-letter stat distributions are very vulnerable to not providing value to your board. Okay, detour over, and let's get into the meat of things. How much worse is such a stat distribution? To be honest, the degree of how bad a 5/1 is compared to a 3/3 is kinda tricky to measure. And that's what we're doing in this character study today, so fasten your seatbelts, cause we're doing some fucking math. So let's pick the bluebird, like I said, cause in my eyes that's the one unit which suffers the most from this, together with the horse obviously, but the horse already got its own video. In our sheet, we said that the Twitter bird has effective stats of 4/1. We are looking over a period of 3 turns and listing the value of each unit per round here. The bluebird, if we keep it for 3 turns, will provide a buff for +2 attack on average per turn, cause its buff will actually stay on the board. So what if there was a way for us to decrease the overall stats the more either attack or HP is different from another? It would be also even nicer if that kind of multiplier, let's call that SD for stat difference, would also weigh in the overall stats. Okay, I hear you, this shit got really complicated real quick, so let me elaborate. So the bluebird has 5 overall stats, so a 4/1. So we could just take the difference between those, so 3. I mean, we can work with that, right? But a llama, for example, would have that too, cause it's a 3/6, ignoring its effect obviously for this calculation. And I think the bluebird is a way worse culprit of this problem than the llama, right? That wouldn't be fair to the llama at all. And we need to be extra fair to that dude, cause he's getting a lot of hate lately. Well, maybe rightfully so. I'm not the one to determine that right now. I'm going on a tangent, am I not? Sorry, let's talk about that piece of horseshit some other time. Sorry, my cute little llama. Well, back to topic. We could now take the difference between attack and HP and compare that amount to the overall amount of stats. If we put the difference of the stats over the total amount of stats, now the higher the difference, the higher the result, but dependent on the overall stats. So let's try it out with the bluebird and then with the llama. The difference between the stats from the bluebird is 3. Bluebird's overall stats are 5. 3 over 5 equals 0.6 SD. Remember, SD stands for stat difference. Now llama, difference is again 3 over 9 equals 0.3 SD. So the llama is not being punished that hard for having more stats basically. So the more the difference between attack and HP there is, the SD would grow, and would grow more the less overall stats the unit has. Okay, cool, but how can we incorporate this in our sheet? I think to further tamper with our overall stats wouldn't be so smart, so let's just invent a score system. Let's call that score frog points. Okay, yeah, I know, real inventive. We now can take the overall stats, somehow include our SD from a second ago, and would then have a score for a unit. How about that? But for example, just multiplying our SD with our overall stats would just always result in the amount of difference between attack and HP, because here the overall stats would just cancel themselves out. We need to do this differently and a bit more fancy at that. Firstly, I want our score, or frog points, to be higher the better the unit is. If our SD stat is high, our score should be lowered. So what we can do is calculate overall stats minus overall stats times SD. Let's try it out for the bluebird. Our SD is 0.6 for it. The bluebird has overall stats of 5. 5 minus 5 times 0.6 is 2. Okay, with this the bluebird would have a score of 2 frog points. Okay, let's do this for the ant now to get a feeling for it. SD for our ant is 2 divided by 6, so 1/3 or 0.33. Overall stats are 6. 6 minus 6 times 0.3 is 4, so the ant would have 4 frog points. So the ant is twice as good as the bluebird? Not really? I mean, yeah, the bluebird is obviously worse than the ant, but is it as bad as this one suggests? I actually don't think so. I think our correction through the stat difference is just correcting too much. So let's just divide our SD stat by 2. Again, bluebird 5 minus 5 times 4 minus 1 divided by 5 divided by 2 is 3.5. The bluebird has 3.5 frog points, and 6 minus 6 times 4 minus 2 divided by 6 divided by 2 equals 5. Hell yeah, I think we're onto something here. Let's call that new multiplier SDM for stat difference multiplier. Yeah, we're really intelligent here. So SD over 2 is our SDM to correct for the difference in attack or HP to one another. Obviously, we always need to calculate the absolute difference between attack and HP. So far, every unit had more attack than HP, but we want to have the same if a unit has more HP than attack. Calculating with absolute differences solves that problem. Let's apply this to every tier 1 unit now. The ant has 5 frog points, like we established. The beaver has 4.5, and the beetle as well. Let's, by the way, look at the beetle real quick, cause we never did that really. The beetle reads, when it eats shop food, it buffs the shop animals for +1 health. How many animals is the beetle buffing which you actually end up picking up? Maybe 1 or 2? So 1.5? And how often do you do that? Not often, I guess, but sometimes you do. Maybe 20% of every turn? 10%? I mean, it depends obviously. If you play a ladybug with it, you are feeding your beetle more often, so is it fair to calculate with maybe 40%? Please comment down below if you play beetle differently, because I for sure don't feed my beetle too often. Whoops, I hope Peter didn't hear it out of context. So, buffs for +1 health to 1.5 units in 40% of turns is 1.5 times 0.4 equals 0.6 for the amount multiplier. Speed multiplier is obviously 1, so turns out the beetle has 4.8 frog points. Okay, moving on. Bluebird, we talked about this, 3.5 frog points. Cricket has 4.5 frog points. This seems quite high in my eyes, but remember, the bluebird dies really quickly and only buffs attack, and the beetle has more points than the cricket. I was unsure at first, but I actually think this is quite correct. The duck has 2.95 frog points. This is also a bit misleading, but fair, as the duck most likely will lose you a round. This obviously is accounted for here. Maybe we will crack open the duck again at some point, but not in this video. I actually also want to finally have a look in tier 2s in the next one, so we will get to that duck at some point again, yeah. The fish has 5 points and is as strong as the ant now. Seems to be quite right in my eyes, doesn't it? Horse has 4 frog points. Yeah, horse is bad. The ladybug has 4.4 frog points. Well, welcome on the scoreboard, ladybug. The mosquito even has 4.75, but this is probably due to its 1.5 amount multiplier, which we added because shooting 1 damage is sometimes worth more than having 1 HP. The otter though has 5.5 frog points. That's quite a lot, but yeah, the otter is an amazing tempo play like we established the last time. The otter is balanced cause you need another unit for the otter to unlock its full potential. This is something we didn't account for here, because you will always only play otter like that. You won't ever place an otter on an empty lineup, right? Bruh. Same with the ant obviously too. Both of these are quite good here. Also in-game that is, obviously, but the otter takes the cake here cause his attack and HP don't differ so much from another than with the ant. Lastly, the pig receives a score of 3.45 frog points. So the overall average frog points from tier 1 units is 4.4. So you can expect 4.4 frog points from any given tier 1 unit on average. Now let's quickly look at animals which, regarding to this math, are above average. So first, the ant, which isn't surprising as I think the ant is an auto-buy in the first round. The beaver, although it's slow, it provides a lot of stats to your board with a 2-2 body and a buff of plus 2 HP. The Beetle is also above average, which seems a bit iffy to be honest, but remember, the Beetle is a 2-3 body with a small upside. It will win you games in the first rounds on its own sometimes. I think the Beetle being above average is warranted. The Cricket with 5.4 frog points is slightly above average, which only comes through its stats. We might crack open this one too in a future video, cause I am not too sold yet on the idea of the Cricket being above average honestly. The fish, which shouldn't be a surprise that it's above average. The mosquito is an interesting one, but I think it's fair that it's close to being average actually. And the otter. In my eyes and in my sheet, the best tier 1 unit in the game with 5.5 frog points. It provides a lot of tempo and it's extremely versatile. And stats prove me right actually. The Reddit user Kronos simulated almost 12 million possible round 1 matchups to determine which squads win more than others. And in almost every lineup which had a win percentage of over 90%, there was an otter in it. I will link this Reddit post in the description as well. Huge shout out to this guy actually. If you have an itch for statistics and math, you definitely should check it out. What an amazing piece of work. Okay, and we're done here. We will leave it like that. In the next character studies, it will finally be time to have a look into tier 2. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And like always, the spreadsheet is linked down in the description if you want to check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye! As always, if you like this video, never tell me or your friends. And also please never share this around. Also, please make sure to not like this video. If you want to see more content like this, definitely don't subscribe to my channel and never check out this video displayed over here. See you in the next video. I'm out.